Maggie will be here in just a moment. She went to a different link, so she was a little confused. So she'll be here in just a moment. So hang in there here. And I'm gonna try to figure out, there's like 100, there she is. All right, there's like 180 that we have registered. So I think there might be some issues with like the linkers. But all right, here's Max. So let's get started.
So sorry, so sorry.
You're good, Maggie. You're good. Yes. Thank you for being here today with us. It looks like there's some problems like with the links. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a look at that. But let's go ahead and get started here. Give me 1 second. All right, you should be able to share the screen as well. Um, so, all right. All right. Welcome, Maggie, Advocate for Nurses. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and let you take it away and do what you do best. So, thanks for being here.
Can you hear me? Because I'm having a hard time. You keep breaking out, so I'm not sure. Can everyone hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Perfect. 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 Well, thank you so much for inviting me to this space and having me on. Just a little bit about myself. My name is Maggie Ortiz. I've been a nurse for 24 years. I started with my associate's degree, so hoorah, hoorah for 89, roughly about 90% of us are women, and oftentimes that is a way to bridge yourself to some more financial independence, along with some of the stuff that you guys are already doing. So started with an associate's degree, spent roughly about 15 years at in the ICU, critical care, doing ER, pre-op, PACU, endo, IR, cath lab. I like to joke everywhere, but labor and delivery, and that was by choice. That's just me personally. After I've been practicing for about 15 years, I left a freestanding emergency room and I went to a board of nursing, and I took national training and I learned how to investigate nurses. I only stayed for about 6 months. They were not extending nurses what I now know to be due process, and it did change my life. That's why I created Advocates for Nurses. So I help nurses and their legal teams when they're under investigation. I help nurses with lots of education. I help nurses transition over into legal nursing, because what we don't know about our license is truly affecting us. And there's just so many nuances to that. One being that that word is protected in 33 states, the word nurse. If you don't hold a professional license in that state, I don't care if you're calling yourself a nurse coach or nursepreneur, you cannot be calling yourself a nurse in a state that you could not physically walk into that building. So I have found that that lack of knowledge that we just don't get in school is a big deal. It does affect nurses. I've been helping nurses and their legal teams for roughly about a decade. Not just with like high profile cases like, I know Redonda Vault, the Vanderbilt nurse, all the way down to a nurse just reached out to me 6 weeks ago or so. And I believe that Emily and I talked about this, where she took a functional medicine alternative course as an RN, and the stuff that the tools that they provided everyone, it could be MD, NP, RN, LP, and anyone could take this course. The tools, the templates that they gave everyone didn't mirror her scope of practice. So front facing on her website, some of the tools that she was using, her communication with her quote unquote clients appeared that she was representing herself as a physician. And let me just tell you, I told you I spent some time at the nursing board. You know who's more than happy to troll us? The medical board. So if you're misrepresenting yourself, you can be real sure I saw complaints that did originate from the medical board, because the duty of boards is to protect the public and not us. So if you truly are misrepresenting yourself, then that is reportable conduct and discipline by a board of nursing. I don't know the outcome of hers yet, hopefully because she did not actually establish a relationship. Some of the stuff I talk about in my legal nurse course, duty, breach of duty, causation, and damages. She never created a duty with anyone. It was just front facing. So hopefully, they will drop any of, some of that. Emily, chime in anytime if you feel like I'm getting too long-winded. I'm just going to start just reviewing some stuff as well. I do teach nurses how to cross over into legal nursing. one of the things that I have found is that it is grossly expensive to do this. And you don't necessarily need to take all these courses that you'll see out there. And I'm not going to name anyone because even schools offer them. Some of these large organizations, I think Duke, Yale, I mean, insert any of these Ivy League schools, they do offer either micro credentialing or continuing education or for a fee, sometimes up to $10,000 for you to take, legal nurse consulting education. I've never taken any of that. And I've been 6 different types of legal nursing. And so I created a course that's only $500 to teach you how to cross over. I am giving you guys a additional 25% off. So it's $325 because you don't need any of that. Quite honestly, I let an organization pay me to go do clear training, which is national training to be an investigator. Now, retrospectively, at the time, I didn't know that, but that was my first crossover to legal nursing. So legal nurse means a lot of different words. And in the first 10 minutes, I give you like 100 things that word means, because most of us think it means legal nurse, consultant, and expert nurse. I just told you I was an investigator. There's so many things that you as a nurse being so magical that you can cross over and to do right now with the education, training, and knowledge that you have. Because what does a lawyer want? What does an agency want? You already have it, your nursing knowledge. Anything else, you can add that layer on. You can learn those things as you move along. But why not allow an organization to pay you to have that education, training, and knowledge? If you're at, let's just say, a hospital and you're thinking about doing something around forensics, why not just have the organization pay for you to go to that training? Oftentimes they do. They'll pay for CEN or the certified emergency nursing, exam, or the CCRN, which is like the critical care one that you'll see like the ICU nurses have. But you see what I mean? If if you're an ER nurse and you're going to be doing some forensics, why don't you just let them to pay you to get that certification that's also is used in the legal nurse world? So I find that to be, very useful as well. The templates that I have created, I have been working in this arena for about a decade, and that's part of the problem as well, is we have the nursing knowledge, we understand it, but we don't know how to write a report. We don't know how to, what is it that they want? I don't know how to talk to a lawyer. You do. Absolutely. They're no different than the physician, the other nurses you stood next to, and you learn how to write a soapy note. You learn how to use an EHR, whether it was actual paper or Epic or Cerner, it doesn't matter. So you're going to let them teach you how to do that. My first crossover outside of the board of nursing was a legal nurse consultant who found me on LinkedIn and said, hey, it was a cath lab case. It was someone, I believe, who lost their leg because someone didn't document a pulse in the extremity for hours and hours and hours, and asked me if I'd look at it. I was like, absolutely. Full transparency. I've never been an expert. Now, I was trained as an investigator, but I've never been an expert. She was like, no big deal. Because what they want is your nursing knowledge. They want you to look at a case as an expert. Now, I chose to be a testifying expert. I no longer do that. And there's all kinds of different types of possibilities. You don't have to be an expert nurse. In my course, I talk about that. That's week 3, but that's not for everyone. And I choose not to do expert work anymore in civil litigation. So that would be for like medical malpractice cases. If your organization gets sued, we oftentimes hear that that's civil litigation. I only do things as it pertains to administrative law, the border nursing, which any one of us can do. Again, crossing over to being an expert. When an attorney reaches out to me or a nurse, I work with them and their legal team, and we're working up, their case, writing a rebuttal, and I'm asking them, just give me the last report that you used, and I just mirror that. So all of that I have pulled together in my course. I have a handout because I love a handout. I do love resources. There are other free resources that you don't have to pay for on my website as well. Just as a caveat, charting to protect your license. um, under investigation, and then legal tips for nurses. But so in the course, I created for each hour roughly a 20-page handout to go along with each hour to help you understand some of the stuff that I'm talking about. No one has an attention span to listen to some of the stuff that can be very nuanced. We just don't know nor understand some of the legal stuff as it pertains to us. So I try to make it more digestible in a presentation. And in the handout, there are lots of information and then just clickable links. No one wants to go and do all that research. I did it for you. So over the last decade, I've just pulled together the resources and dropped those in, a handout for each hour. And then I created a 6-month strategy for success. There's some entities that are out there that you're going to see. The American Association of Legal Nurse Consulting, American Association. Yes. They have a website, AALNC. Highly respect these people. This is a great organization. If you don't follow them or know who they are, I highly suggest you just go in to their website right now and check out some of their resources. I use one of their books. It's the second edition, which is roughly like $30. And I just work it backwards in the 6-month strategy for success. And then I take the Nurses in the Law. It's done by Nancy Brent. She's a nurse attorney, an RNJD. And I created the 6-month strategy for success so that you could just take both of those books, read roughly about 60 to 70 pages a week using the tools and resources that I provide you so that you have a better understanding. And even after that, if you wanted to sit for the exam, there is an exam. If you want to become a legal nurse consultant, which I've never sat for, but you absolutely should, that the AALNC has, they have modules and you could sit for that exam if you're an RN, and you have to be practicing for at least 5 years to sit for their exam. But I work that basically backwards, and you could sit for that exam. The other thing that they offer is a certificate, different than a certification. I'm not sure if you guys don't, those are two different words. Anyone can sit for the certificate. The certification, like I said, does require that you have an active RN license and that you've been a nurse for 5 years. In the course, it's broken up. I teach you how to start a business. I teach you how to pick out a name, get a bank account, because, part of my platform is protecting yourself. Even as an entrepreneur, I can't take money as Maggie Ortiz. That's setting myself up for litigation. Can I take money as Advocates for Nurses, PLLC? I sure can. In my state of Texas, they do require that I have a professional liability, limited liability corp. That's just what Texas requires. Quite honestly, they just wanted $50 more of my money. But whatever structure that you decide to set up, and I talk about that, but you can't take money as yourself. You're setting yourself up for litigation. I break that all up, give you some resources, some handouts, and then make it a lot more tangible with some actionable items, invite you to a cohort. Because I think it's not only important for nurses to be able to transition to whatever it is that you want to do, and to cross over not only to some of these other cool kid stuff, that Emily talks about, and these other, amazing entrepreneurs that are coming, talking about the cannabis, talking about, microdosing, nursing education, any of these other entrepreneurs. There's always the link right on back to you hold a professional license, and you have to protect yourself. Anything that we do, you have to make sure that you do that. I feel like I lost my train of thought there just because I got sidetracked with some of the cannabis and the microdosing stuff. And I just want to pause here just a minute because, I do a lot of advocacy. You just have to be careful when you're doing any of these things as an entrepreneur, when science supersedes rules and regulations by a decade. So let that sink in for just a minute. Science supersedes rules and regulations by a decade. And although there is science that supports a lot of this stuff, a lot of the boards haven't adopted cannabis nor microdosing, any of the, I don't want to misquote because it's really not my wheelhouse, psychedelics, and Emily will chime in just so I don't use that word inappropriately. But you have to make sure that you're protecting yourself when you're doing that, anything front facing, because some of those things are still, on the DEA list, right? I mean, cannabis, unfortunately, just the classification of it. And then the boards of nursing, I've seen hundreds of nurses reported for cannabis being testing positive. I was at the board myself, and a nurse tested positive. This was, I left there 2015. She had been in Colorado. It was legal in her state. She came back. Someone else was diverting drugs. Everyone got swabbed. She tested positive for cannabis. Got reported, and I went to the head of enforcement. I was like, how, it's not, it's legal in the state, but um they were able to put it aside because I asked. Not all boards would do that. So just as you're moving through this space and we're touching on some legal things, it would be irresponsible for me not to talk about some of that stuff as well. Yes, I want you to transition over to legal nursing, but it also does expose you to stuff. You're like, ooh, wow, oh my gosh. You start working up cases, you start seeing stuff, not only your own practice and maybe where you're going, but your understanding of what you're risking possibly becomes a little bit more profound in your documentation, your CYA, making sure that you're getting with a lawyer. And if you're doing anything, just say, hey, will you look over my contract? Will you look over my paperwork? Will you make sure that, my customers know that, I'm not giving medical advice. All this stuff is just for educational purposes, and whatever, it would be unique to whatever you're doing, but that you're doing, that stuff to make sure that you're protecting yourself and not risking getting reported to a board of nursing. Because once it gets reported, this could be 2 to 3 years of your life. And I don't want you guys to take that lightly. So, Emily, can you think of, is there anything that, I have a couple more notes, but is there anything else that you think I should touch on that you think is like important for the audience? I don't really know who all has, signed up. I mean, who all the audience, we have nursing students. Do we have nursing students?
Yep, we have nursing
Yeah. So nursing
students,
students.
nurses.
So like nursing students, especially, might be a little bit premature as far as like crossing over to be, maybe an expert or a legal nurse, but some of the knowledge is just, you're not going to get it anywhere else. I have tied in jurisprudence as the class that nurses in Texas have to take. It's basically the intersection of our license and the law. I highly suggest that piece of it and building your nursing foundation. So as it pertains to the nursing student, maybe not so much transitioning into the legal nurse consulting quite yet, or to that legal world, but charting to protect your professional license, is always a good one. That's, something I'm giving away for free, a big one. And then just knowing and understanding some of these things to help you as a new nurse as well. I think I talked about, I spoke to the nursing students at graduating this winter and spring. Congratulations, mad respect. Making sure that you have professional liability insurance. And I know all schools go over with you some basic stuff. We talked about negligence, gross negligence, and some of the deviations of the standard of care, which I do talk about in, transitioning into legal nursing. I think it's, really important. But as far as the, the new grad, the new nurse, understanding those basic concepts, and I do talk about those in the charting course as well, because it's, if you didn't chart it, it wasn't done. And when you cross over to legal nursing, that becomes so evident, because you as the expert are just trying to look at, let me see the evidence, and you're like, wait, what? How are there no words written? How could the nurse have not written any words? How is that even possible? And then it gives the expert nurse in a civil case, criminal case, or administrative case a very hard time to opine or give their opinion on your conduct, because you literally wrote no words down. So, um, I think I touched on the new grads, the seasoned nurses. Again, I find that even seasoned nurses oftentimes don't understand the rules and regulations that dictate our professional license. So taking the intro to legal nursing course, I think, is really important, or getting any kind of um, legal education as it pertains to nursing, especially as you move along. I think it helps to fill your soul, and it may make you even see that there's something else that you want to do. We're only uncovering just a mere fraction of the things, that you could possibly do. I mean, one of the great things of Emily is she's, the modern nurse. I mean, the litany of things that we can do, and our ability is just like never ending. And don't forget that when you're moving around. So as you cross over and you learn from these myself and these other, speakers, keeping in mind when you're, you know, deciding what you want to do, keeping the rules and regulations in mind, and knowing that you are valuable and you can do whatever you want. I know a lot of the seasoned nurses will come to these things like I have, when I first started my journey as an entrepreneur, because I was tired of the bedside and I knew that I had gifts. I knew there are other things that I could do, and so I'm glad that you found Emily. I'm glad that you found me, and hopefully, you transition into legal nursing. It exposes you to it's a door to so many avenues. I started out as an investigator, and I've been a legal nurse expert. I've testified in legal cases, civilly, depositions, which are different. I've testified administratively, board of nursing cases. I've written expert reports. I've been a consultant. I've been a non-testifying expert. I've started my own business. I started another business. So once you branch out, it just you will be unstoppable. But just making sure that you protect yourself. I do want to touch on just a little bit of professional liability insurance. If you don't have professional liability insurance, highly suggest that you do. Again, when you're calling yourself a nurse, you have to protect yourself. So your car carriers, oftentimes your home insurance companies often underwrite for professional liability insurance. So I highly suggest that you reach out to them as well. They're a great resource for you. And bottom line, they want your business. And then absolutely, I know Emily just put it in the chat. Had not You are more than welcome to go over and check out my resources. There's a link to podcasts that I've been on as well. I've been on anyone from Pat Iyer, that book that I just told you about from the American Association of Legal Nurse Consultants. She's one of the editors. She is the legal nurse consultant for all intents and purposes. And she had me on her podcast talking about some of the board of nursing stuff. There's, I don't know, 8 or 9 other podcasts that I've been on. I think that it's, useful to not only listen to myself, but other nursepreneurs as you're moving around trying to figure out what you want to do and where you fit in this space. And then making sure that you understand. I'm going to go touch back on, I do every single day because nurses reach out to me every single hour. You got to make sure that you're staying in your scope of practice, that you're doing stuff that you have or you're licensed to do. When I was doing, for example, patient advocacy, I did not write RN behind my name, and I did not call myself a nurse because I was doing stuff during COVID, during the pandemic. And yes, they had lifted some of the telehealth rules, but I don't trust anyone. So I just took RN off of my name. I started a business that wasn't tied to nursing. And then people would say, well, how do you have this knowledge? Well, I have a master's degree in nursing, but I'm not misrepresenting myself. Even like people like Redonda, who doesn't have a license any longer, or anyone who gets their license revoked, can say, I hold a degree in nursing. But just, remembering all of that stuff always ties back to your nursing license and the people who are giving you the privilege to practice.
Yeah, I was going to piggyback on that. I think that, it's important, like you just said, is to represent yourself as a nurse and within your scope of practice. So, for example, We've talked about this before, and I've consulted you about the microdosing, and I think it's really important to hit on the microdosing coach situation. When I'm coaching clients for microdosing, I am not a nurse. I'm a coach. So those clients know that I'm not a nurse in that situation, and I'm not following the scope of practice of a nurse because that is not my role in that moment. So just like many nurses have different degrees, different functionalities, maybe they run an administration at a hospital, they are taking that nursing knowledge, but it might not be still within their scope of practice. So they might kind of drop that nurse off at the end, and now they are a different role, right? So it's important to make that distinguished difference and understand that yes, you can still own different businesses. Maybe I have a nurse that owns a window curtain blind business. She is not a nurse when she is doing that stuff, when she's going to people's houses and measuring windows. She's not a nurse in that moment, right? So it's really important to have your patients, clients, people, students, whoever you're teaching or being with, understand what your role is and who you are when you're in front of those people, if that makes sense. I hope that kind of clears some things up.
Yeah. And to your point, and I just want to caveat on this a little bit. So, to your point, if you if you do commit, not like if I'm cleaning someone's house and I come to the house and I assault them, I'm arrested. Now I can be reported to a board of nursing. To your point, as long as we don't do anything wrong, and then you can never misrepresent yourself. You are always held to the highest level of your education. So say I'm an RN and an NP. So I have still an active RN license because I choose to, or LPN, and then I get my NP. If I choose to work as an RN because say whatever the shift came available and I needed some extra money, and I clock in as an RN, I am always held to my highest level of education. I don't get to say that I clocked in as an RN. So therefore, if someone presents with something that I would have known as an NP, but I'm clocked in as an RN, the board of nursing doesn't see that. That's not my scope. That's not my role. Now you're not going to treat that person, but you'd have to use the chain of command. So the person comes in, I see something, I'm a nurse practitioner, I have to go to the MD or whatever and say, this is happening. I have the education, training, and knowledge. And let me just say that again, because that's where they hijack us. You have the education, training, and knowledge. And like I told the Texas Women's University, I said, because we were talking about malpractice and negligence and what that means. And I said, do you understand what malpractice is? I said, do you understand the difference? Malpractice is this, you're sitting here in a school getting the education, training, and knowledge. Negligence moves to malpractice by the education, training, and knowledge that we obtain by becoming nurses. So I always try to keep that in mind, or tell people that I have learned stuff along this journey that I didn't even know was real or possible. So to your point, yes, you can do whatever you want. You just have to be careful. Don't ever misrepresent yourself. Like with to her point with the microdosing, CYA, you can be real sure on all my emails. I don't give legal advice, because what's the thing that people will say that I'm misrepresenting, like I'm a lawyer, and I'm absolutely not. I do education. That is it. Because of my unique background, I absolutely can stand on that. And I could prove that, but you have to make sure that you have, those kind of things in place, and you cannot, misrepresent yourself if you're choosing to, work in a different role. You're doing like the alternative medicine. And I see that a lot. And with the nurse coaching and the telehealth, wound care nurse, for example, doing telehealth in a state that she doesn't have a license, and that was reportable conduct. You cannot do that. You cannot be talking to anyone unless you could walk into that building. You cannot work through an organization like, well, I'm just doing consulting. You're not. You cannot let organizations put you in these precarious positions. And my advice to anyone who's doing tele stuff, you either get one compact license, right, that because you live in a compact state that covers you for those 33 states, and they keep coming on board. The last quote, I believe, was 33. And then the other states that you're practicing in, and you're going to be doing tele, that you get those license. But you cannot even be talking to people in another state. if you don't have a professional license to be doing so. And then to Emily's point as well, when you're doing, like the microdosing, you're on supplements, on cannabis, anything like that, it has to be straight up consultation. You're not giving medical advice. I would even, make them sign, you're consulting with your own provider. I'm not asking you to stop your medications. I mean, just a lot of stuff that just front facing would protect you. It goes to the board of nursing, it goes to civil litigation, and what are they going to be looking at? Well, what were you telling the client? What were you telling them? And so it will come down to some of those things. Some of the coaches I was telling in Austin, front facing, a plaque, your name tag, whatever it is, for doctorate prepared nurses. Oftentimes we've seen this where nurses have been reported to a board of nursing, and now you're doing something that's microdosing, or like the IV hydration. I've seen that, these nurses get reported. They report them for the IV hydration. Oftentimes it's physicians, and then they're misrepresenting themselves, calling them doctor, and you have to make sure that you put all the letters behind your name, and that you're telling the clients, I have my doctorate in nursing, I'm a nurse, I'm a nurse, I'm a nurse, on your business, on the website. I mean, make it so redundant that if it went to the board of nursing or went anywhere, they're like, what's this is retaliatory. There's 12 different places, it's 5 different clicks, and I can already see saying we're a nurse, we're a nurse, we're a nurse, we're a nurse, or not giving advice, not giving medical advice, see your doctor, then there's no question about what you're doing. So are there any questions that I could answer?
Yeah, actually, hi, Maggie. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I was just wondering how you maintain your nursing license, being a legal nurse. So, as you're maybe not working at the bedside or working in the community per se, what is needed or required to maintain your actual nursing license?
That's a great question. And this is a question I get asked a lot by my entrepreneur folks. So you're going to have to go to your own state. What state do you work in?
I'm actually in the Middle East right now, so very
Okay.
much not in the US, but yeah.
Okay. So do you hold are you trying to hold a US license, or do you have a desire, or?
I'm quite curious because
Sure.
I'm just I'm just listening to your
Yeah,
presentation. I'm wondering, like, how did that work out? But
sure.
yeah, I know not for me specifically.
Okay. So I'll break it down to some more nuances. Have you ever held a license in the United States, just so I don't talk over your head?
No, only Canada.
Okay. Okay. So every state in the United States is different. Not every structure is the same. I'm fighting that fight, but bear with me. So every state does get to decide what that requirement means. And to your point, this year, when I was reading my eligibility questions for my renewal, some of those nuances did come under, like, I'm like, wait, what does it say? How many hours do you have to be touching? It doesn't, for nurses in United States, it doesn't always mean that you have to be doing direct patient care. For me, just like you said, I'm doing legal nursing. So I'm practicing a type of nursing. It doesn't have to be per se, I don't have to still be in the hospital. I could be doing research, legal nursing. I'm studying practices, evidence-based practices, and I'm staying up to date with the standards of care. But to your point, now, if I wanted to go back to the bedside, say I wanted to go back to the emergency room, the ICU, whatever, and I haven't touched a patient for 2 years, that's different. Now the onus is on my that organization to say, we're going to need to train you if I don't have that necessary train you, or to do a longer orientation because you've been away from the bedside for 2 years. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. Thank
And
you.
then every state does have, and not every, I wish they all did. Most states in the United States have continuing education requirements. Texas has jurisprudence, which is the only state actually in the United States. It's the intersection of your license and the law. And then every third renewal, we have to take the 3-hour CE. I am a border state as well. They require us to take a trafficking course. So those are other ways that they require us to maintain our license. But that is a very good question. And I think I told Emily I'm going to the health conference this weekend, and there's a lot of nurse entrepreneurs. I'm one of 30 identified as nurse innovators creators. And this is one of their very questions. Melinda, she's got, I can't remember she's got ways basically for the hospital, was asking me this very question. And I said, well, you're doing nursing research. You're collecting stats, you're doing data. Our bachelor's degree and master's degree, we're taught, we all have to take a research course, and my master's degree, I created a tool. So we have to learn research, but great question. Normally dictated by the independent state.
Wonderful. Thank you. And can I ask one more small question?
Yes.
So I'm actually working with nurses who are trying to either immigrate to Canada, the US, the UK. So I shouldn't say working with, I'm developing like programs for them to learn how to, the soft skills required when you're moving from maybe like India or the Philippines to somewhere like the States or Canada, because I feel like there's a big bridge, there's a big gap in the bridge, where there's a lot of things lost in communication. So I'm just curious, from your knowledge, if you've noticed any gaps between maybe nurses who are coming from different countries that are now establishing themselves in the United States. And if so, I'm curious to know what that might have looked like.
Sure. I don't know if you got enough time, sister, but this is something that one of the nursepreneurs is Shaladia. I can't remember the name of her company, but she's a nurse from Canada, actually, who is being showcased at Health as well. And this is something that she's doing, but there are several organizations out there. You should absolutely check them out as well, because there is a gap. And when I was at the Vive conference, what was so profound to me, what she said, and I had not even thought about, is that she was saying how Indian nurses and in some countries, they don't have long-term care. And so when nurses come to this country, the one place where we place nurses, long-term care. So you know why they get reported to the board of nursing? And there's a Filipino nurse in jail right now, literally. And I wish I was lying. So again, you don't have enough time, sister. It's a problem. Not only language barriers, cultural barriers, though there are huge nuances. Yes, it's a problem. I collaborate with Kay Mendoza. She's on the ICN. I helped her get on there. Nurses are trafficked into this country. I didn't know that. That came on my purview, to your point. So there's a lot of stuff around nurses that are immigrating to this country that can be heartbreaking. I am collaborating with people like, I can't remember the name of her business, and a couple other people that are, trying to, bring nurses into this country, to your point. And there is a lot of nuances. They don't understand the rules and regulations that dictate the professional license. And I just told you, one of them's in prison. They don't even understand that they have rights, that if their organization is taking away their passport or, doing some of these other things, that they, even as a nurse, have a right. So I hope to teach them that and leverage that as well, because to your point, every country is different in how they set up their nursing school or colleges and regulatory bodies. But I applaud you, and I hope you're on LinkedIn as well, because there's other people that are, there's a huge need for what you're doing.
I am, and thank you. I'll definitely reach out. Thank you for answering my question.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question.
Yes.
Why is it important to get limited liability insurance, and what would it cover if possible things went down in the legal realm?
Sure. So not going to ever cover you criminally. It's for civil litigation or for anyone who holds a license. That's one of your biggest fears. So the professional liability insurance is like car or home insurance. If something happens to you, you have a deductible. It's the same situation. You get a letter from a board of nursing, you're named in civil litigation, your employer calls you and said, hey, come on down to risk management. You're going to be deposed. And now you're sitting there, and the organization and you are involved, and the doctor has their own attorney, and somehow you're sitting there with the hospital's attorney, and it's you or your organization. So it would afford you an attorney, either civil attorney or board of nursing. You are 98% more likely to sit in front of the board of nursing than you are civilly or criminally. So it can be lengthy and long, and it could cost you lots and lots of money. If you lose your job because you got reported to the board of nursing and you don't have professional liability insurance, the financial burden that oftentimes the nurses struggle with is profound. It's very profound. So if you only have to cough up, several hundred, maybe a couple $1,000s, as opposed to 10 to 20 thousands of dollars, can be really a deal breaker. This professional liability insurance, this is no more than 1 or 2 Starbucks drinks a month. I'm being dead serious. Just let them know, even if you're just at the bedside, say you're not even transitioned out yet, even when you're at the bedside, I am Maggie, I'm working in the ICU. This is what I do. Okay. We think that you should have this, talk about your population a little bit. If you're working labor and delivery, let me say this again. If you're working labor or delivery, that's until the baby is 18. And we were just talking about this case where someone got reached out to, an instructor, and 3 years after she had left the labor and delivery unit in a very high litigious area, which is labor and delivery. So having the professional liability insurance affords you the ability to call them and say, hey, I have been named in civil or administrative case. I need a list of lawyers. Can you send me that list of lawyers? You call that list of lawyers, and they're the ones who help guide you through the process. So that is a great question. And you can write it off on your taxes as well.
Love it. I love it. And what is something that, if you do get a letter from the board of nursing and they're like, hey, surprise, surprise, we're coming to make a visit. If you get a letter from the board of nursing and it has legal stuff written all over it, besides freaking out, which you should not do, what are the next steps for a nurse that is contacted by the board of nursing for some legal situation? What should we do in that situation?
Sure, that's a great question. So many things, even if you don't have professional liability insurance, that's okay. That is absolutely okay. Of course, you're gonna reach out to me, and I'm gonna help give you some resources, but you cannot ignore the board of nursing, but you're not gonna openly speak to them. Hey, I did receive this letter. You, more often than not, you're not gonna have to call them. It will more often not be a written response that you're gonna have to give them. But in the event that they do call you, hey, thank you so much. I'm so sorry. Where did you say you were calling from again? So I think I'm gonna need to call a lawyer first. May I have your name and number, maybe an email address, and may I call you back? More often than not, unless you are intentionally harming someone and they're not calling you or emailing you, they're showing at your job or your house, if that's the situation, and I promise you that. But if you get a letter, you need to reach out to your professional liability insurance. You can reach out to me. We could start looking at that. More often than not, you have 30 days to respond. So it's not like it's like that. But even if a nurse yesterday reached out to me, and was like, well, it's due tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, okay. It's okay. It's okay. So I just had him write a letter to the board of nursing and just say, hey, I was really stressed and I just need a little bit more time to find a lawyer so I can, give you a response. And I've never seen them really say no. So you just send them a generic email, or you call them and just say, I just need a little bit more time. Again, you reach back out to me. And then I also have free resources. There's videos on the National Council for State Boards of Nursing about being under investigation. We all know here, maybe not the new ones quite yet, but when we first started nursing school, it was just like, did you say cardiac ablation or some electrophysiology, these words that we had no idea. And now we're slinging them around like, we're experts because we are. Same with being under investigation. Once you get some basic understanding, like, okay, it could be like 2 to 3 years of my life. You know what I mean? Okay, I understand that. Okay, I can write down my response. Okay. You know what I mean? You go through the video. If you have to watch it 5 times, I think you're the one who told me that you have to hear something 7 times, or, you know what I mean? You only retain 10% of what you hear, a same situation. So you can hear me talk all day long, but it will be, I have resources, on my website. I have videos out there because it's 2 a.m. and you're sick to your stomach. And just a little bit of a trigger warning, unfortunately, nurses do, we have mental health issues, right? Now you get this letter, and I've heard nurses, take their lives. Dr. Julie Seamers reached out to me and she said, Maggie, I'm at this conference. And guess what? One of the number one reasons why nurses take their life. And I was like, well, you're reaching out to me, so I already know why. So it is related to a border nursing. So to your point, you're never alone. It is not the end of your life. It is not the end of your career. This is something that more often than not, there's so many people who go through this, and you're not alone. Do not carry this shame, and reach out to me. I promise you, to myself and Emily, we will get you the resources that you need. There's plenty out there. And even if you did make a mistake, you know what? No one's perfect. We're going to help you get in touch with a lawyer, get you, what your rights are, which is your due process rights, and defend your professional license. So thank you for asking. I get a little emotional. It just makes me crazy because, nurses, show up to their jobs and they honestly just wanted to do their jobs. We have to learn, back to my point, like 5,000 different things. And then they're trying to shove legal stuff down us. And they're like, okay, but what do I need to memorize for the test? Because I'm not a criminal. I'm not going to do anything wrong. And then that's gone. Right. And then we're practicing and I'm trying to remember, expialidocious. I can't remember, you know what I mean? I'm like, well, and then I don't realize that we innately practice in an environment that is negligent. We cut corners innately just as an environment. And it's not just our industry, it's every industry. What's cutting a corner? Consenting a patient. When a doctor writes an order to consent a patient, you are not consenting a patient. But it's these things that we don't realize until it's on the big screen and they're like, wait, what? But he wrote an order. And I'm like, I know, but remember 217.11 1A says that you have to know and conform to the rules and regulations that dictate your professional license. But so to your point, having some basic understanding about the rules and regulations that dictate your professional license, and of course having me in your back pocket, it's always helpful, as well. One of I actually was Redondo, WWMD. What would Maggie do? I'm like, absolutely, absolutely. I'm like, don't.
I love it. I love it. Yes. And Maggie, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your expertise, and tons of free resources. I love that you give out so many resources. And please go see Maggie on her website. And again, access all the resources. It's an amazing way to gain knowledge, but then also to protect yourself as well. And Maggie also has an awesome membership. Just real quick, would you mind just giving us a little brief detail about how we can join the membership?
Yeah. So it's $5 a month. It's nothing crazy. And actually I'm highlighting Redonda's case. I was going to do like a 20-minute interview with her. It became a 2.5 interview, but you only get 20 minutes because I'm going to break some of it up. But so that's one of the things I do in my subscription. I take a case, I break it down into the different 3 types of law. Now I don't focus on criminal law because that's not my expertise. And most of us are not, that's not going to be where we stand. But I just take a case, I break it up, and I just make it more tangible for us to understand. And because we see it on the news, they're like, how did it get there? How was she arrested? How was she charged with reckless homicide of impaired adult? So I dumb it down for $5 a month. And I give out resources. There's handouts. There is. I help myself. So yes, there's a handout, folks. It's a lot more information than you ever want. Because some of it's so hard to understand. It's negligence, gross negligence. It's the legal piece that we just don't understand. So I want you to hear what I'm saying, but I also want to help you define for it and make it applicable to you in what a generalized practice would be. So thank you for asking. Thank you for asking.
Awesome. All right. Is there any other questions for Advocate Nurse Maggie before we wrap it up here?
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. My pleasure. My pleasure. I'm a lot. I know I'm a lot, but it's my nurse love, tough love. So, and if you ever need anything, please, 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 please don't hesitate to reach out. If I can't help you, I'm going to find you someone who can. So please don't struggle alone.
Yes, awesome. Yes. All right. Well, thanks, Maggie, for coming on to Modern Nurse Fest and sharing your expertise, knowledge, and get in on that membership. Seriously, it's cheaper than Starbucks. Starbucks is out the wazoo nowadays. So put that $5 down. You won't even notice it's coming out of your bank account, but this is a tremendous help, especially if you're new to legal nursing or if you're a legal nurse that needs some support. Maggie is here for you. So thanks again, Maggie, and we'll see you around Modern Nurse Fest.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry about my delayed presence.
All good, all good. We'll see you soon. Thanks, Max.